All right, hello. We are going to talk about the concept of free energy, seemingly something that everyone would want, except for the left, and we're going to explain why on this segment of Stopping Socialism TV. But before we do, I have to put out that call. You need to help us get this message out there. It's very easy, very simple. Just hit the like button, share this content, subscribe to our channel. It's the only way that we can kind of beat these big tech censors at their own game and get this message out there, because without your help, no one will watch this. No one will get to see this. No one will have the opportunity to see our beautiful faces saying these wonderful words. So we're going to talk about this.
It's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
Right.
Really appreciate it. Thanks.
So this is a topic that we've actually talked about before. I'm not exactly sure if we've talked about it here on Stopping Socialism. We probably did, maybe once or twice. But there's been this tweet that's been going around, it's been circulating around recently. I was sent it by two separate people. I actually looked into it, and the tweet itself is a couple of years old, so I don't know why it's making its rounds now. But regardless, I think it's got an important point in it that I will use to lead to all the other major points in this video. So here we go. This is from Zach Cantor, who is founder and CEO of Steady.com. He's an occasional blogger and an all-around nerd. Those are his words, not mine. So the tweet is one huge drawback of nuclear power is that it doesn't dismantle systems of oppression. It only produces clean energy. This makes it unsuitable for solving the climate crisis, which isn't just about the environment. I mean, you fooled me, because I would have thought the climate crisis was specifically about the environment, but hey, you know, who knows? So this tweet was also presented with an excerpt from an article co-authored by Greta Thunberg, one of our favorite human beings.
Love that.
The quote is, "This action, climate action, must be powerful and wide-ranging. After all, the climate crisis is not just about the environment. It is a crisis of human rights, of justice, and of political will. Colonial, racist, and patriarchal systems of oppression have created and fueled it. We must dismantle them all. Our political leaders can no longer shirk their responsibilities." So this is a thing that's not limited to just the Greta Thunbergs of the world and the Zach Cantors of the world. This is actually a theme that we have noticed in, you know, leftist academic thought for a pretty good amount of time now. And one of the things that happened somewhat recently that really brought this to the forefront was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which is Justin's second favorite socialist. Her chief of staff came out with that quote that I'm sure most of you have heard by now, that when he was being questioned about the Green New Deal, he said that the interesting thing about the Green New Deal is it wasn't originally a climate thing at all. Do you guys think of it as a climate thing? Because we really think of it as a how do you change the entire economy thing. So obviously the subtext here is we're just going to use climate change as an excuse to ram through a ton of big government socialist programs. I mean, that's the subtext of that. Justin, am I misinterpreting it?
No, that's clearly what they're going for here, without a doubt. It's amazing how upfront they are about it, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think most people actually do think that it's about solving the climate crisis. The people who believe that that's what's going on here. I don't think most of them are like, you know, I support all these climate policies because, you know, of colonialism and, you know, the patriarchy. I don't think that's what any of these people are saying. I think it's because they are worried about climate change. And the reason they're worried about climate change is because people like Zach Cantor are constantly obsessively telling everyone that the world's going to end if they don't do it. Now we're being told that actually it's just the patriarchy. In addition, it's, well, not just the patriarchy. It's the patriarchy and it's racism, it's colonialism, and it's all these things, inequities wrapped up alongside this scientific problem, right? Which is so convenient. Mm-hmm. Isn't that amazing? There is this problem that just so happens to, if we try to solve it the way they want to solve it, do all the other things that they've been wanting to do anyway, without the problem. That's just amazing. It's like, what a coincidence that there's this one problem that gets them everything they've always wanted.
Well,
I mean, amazing. It's just it's so transparent.
Yeah, right. And I'll get to some more nuclear power stuff here in a minute, but this is the same type of mind frame that you can see in a lot of the quotes that we've put forward with all of our Great Reset stuff. So I've got Prince Charles here saying that we have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis. He was talking about the pandemic. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change. John Kerry says this is a big moment. The World Economic Forum is really going to have to play a front and center role in refining the Great Reset to deal with climate change and inequity, all of which was being laid bare as the consequences of COVID-19. Antonio Gutierrez of the UN says the Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. We must build a more equal, inclusive, and sustainable economies and societies that are more resilient to the face of pandemics, climate change, and many other global challenges that we face. So, again, all of these things are in this subtext of, we'll fix the whole the world's going to end stuff. But what we really want to do is make more equitable, stable, sustainable societies and all of that. So they're trying to, like, up front, when they're appealing to, like, the masses, it's, we got to stop the world from ending. When it's in their, like, kind of the back room, just talking to each other type of things, it's, we're using this as an excuse to basically get whatever policies we want to ram through. Like, is this a coincidence, Justin? Or is this just kind of the way that they're thinking?
Well, I mean, I think that for a lot of them, it's, I think there was a strategy at some point where they actually sat down and they looked at all of the different issues that they care about, and they looked at all the different problems, and they tried to find something that would kind of help them get the biggest bang for their buck. And I think that there was a certain segment of them that understood that and bought into it. But there's this whole plan. But there are a lot of them who I think have become so feverish about, the dangers of climate change that I'm not sure that they necessarily look at the way this guy looks at it. I don't know if everybody on the left really is someone who says, well, we got to solve the climate crisis, but only if it accomplishes all these other goals alongside of it. Because there's a lot of people on the left who think the world's legitimately going to end. Mm-hmm. And, not all of them necessarily believe that. A lot of them don't. But there's a lot of people who believe that. And I think that if they thought nuclear power was going to save the world, then they probably would do it. The reason they don't support nuclear power is not because it doesn't do enough to destroy the patriarchy. It's because they think it's dangerous. They imagine Chernobyl.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this kind of ties in perfectly to this next article. So I've got...
Depends on who you're talking to.
Well, yes. I've got an article from Michael Schellenberger, who is his background, really briefly, he was in he helped the Obama administration pass, like, a package of solar and wind type of things back in, like, 2010. He was really big into climate change alarmism, and that we have to do everything we can to get as much renewables on the table as possible. But as he started doing more and more of his research, he fell out of love with wind and solar, realized that they are terrible alternatives to what we've got in place energy-wise, and says that if we really want to save the world from climate change, we have to embrace nuclear power. So he's got this article here that is on Forbes. This is, again, a couple of years old, but the message is very youthful. So it is an article titled, "The Real Reason They Hate Nuclear is Because It Means We Don't Need Renewables." So it goes through and it explains, like, basically what I just said there, that if we were to really embrace nuclear power, there'd be no need to waste our time and money on wind and solar energy. But it gets into, like, really interesting stuff about halfway down the article, where it starts talking about the real reason why the powers that be don't want reliable energy, period. So it says, the quote is, "After World War II, the working class in developed nations became materially rich, undermining the case that only radical socialist transformation of society could end poverty. So there's this idea, put forth by the Karl Marxes of the world, that we were doomed to a gloomy life of slave labor, essentially wage slaves working for the rich, and that we would only be able to scrub together just like the bare levels of subsistence to move on. If this is the future, if we were to move forward with capitalism. It says, all the problems, quote, this is all the problems which have haunted capitalism, acknowledged Marxist historian Eric Hobsbawm, appeared to dissolve and disappear. So, yeah, the things that they were warning about capitalism just kind of faded away. Everyone was getting more wealthy. The middle class started to develop. We weren't just like eating dirt, like these socialists were predicting. What could Marxism mean, Hobsbawm wondered, to workers, quote, who now expected to spend their annual paid vacation on the beaches of Spain? So it's how are you going to convince people that we need radical change when they're like living a fairly cushy middle-class life, right? In response, radical critics of capitalism shifted their focus. The problem was no longer that capitalism was causing material poverty, but rather that it was destroying the environment. So they basically had to find a new boogeyman. It wasn't capitalism that was causing people to be poor. That was obvious just by looking around. So they needed a new boogeyman to justify their radical reorganization of society. And it started to turn into this environmentalist perspective. Now, this is a concept that we have been seeing from a number of people. There's a couple more listed in this article. This is a quote from the godhead of renewables, Amory Lovins, in 1977. Even if nuclear power was clean, safe, economically assured, of ample fuel, and socially benign, it would be still unattractive because of the political implications of the kind of energy economy it would lock us into. What kind of energy economy would that be exactly? A preposterous, clean, and high energy one. If you ask me, it'd be little short of disastrous for us to discover a source of clean, cheap, abundant energy because of what we would do with it, explains Lovins. So this is like, if we had free energy, if it was clean, there was no externalities that we had to worry about, it would lock us into a system of capitalism where there's no backstop. There's no backstop of, if we do this for too long, the world's going to end. So that's why these people find the idea of cheap, affordable, clean energy to be bad for their agenda, because it locks us into this economy of capitalism and, just generally awesomeness. If I oversimplifying things.
No, I think that's right. And I know there's a lot of people out there who might be thinking, certainly some people in the middle, a lot of people who might lean to the left, who might be thinking, well, this is just, this is all very speculative, and this isn't true. The people who care about global warming, genuinely, they all care about global warming, and they're just trying to solve the problem and do whatever they can. Maybe they're ignorant about nuclear power, and that's really the issue. For the person walking down the street, that's probably true. But for the Al Gores of the world, for the John Kerrys of the world, for Joe Biden, for AOC, the people who have seen this evidence, who have been briefed on it, who've met with energy experts, they know what the deal is. The people at the Sierra Club, all these, they know what the deal is. They understand the benefits to nuclear energy. They get it. They've been told. They know. They don't support it because it doesn't fit the agenda. And just put yourself in their position. You have this big, gigantic agenda of all these different things you want to do, all the checklist items in the Green New Deal. You want these things passed. And right now, you've got a crisis with a timestamp on it that has to, if we don't solve it by XYZ date, we're all going to die. And we're going to put all this stuff, tie all of it in, the college debt cancellation, the
jobs guarantee,
federal jobs guarantee, right? The, universal access to healthy food, like everything that was in the Green New Deal. We're going to dump it all in there. All right. They have put so much time, so much money, so much energy, so much political capital into pushing this idea. If it magically, this problem just disappeared, if we just woke up tomorrow and all of a sudden, there's no global warming anymore, let's say, and there was no way for them to deny that, then all of that work decades of work disappears overnight.
Right.
Now, you can't tell me, no matter how liberal you are, no matter how much you care about climate change, you can't deny that that would be really inconvenient.
Right.
It would be really inconvenient for them. It really would. So you have to admit there's something in there that would make them kind of root for the crisis to keep on going, because it gets them what they want.
Right.
I mean, you can't, there's no way to deny that.
I wrote an article like 6 years ago. It's one of the only actual like op-eds that I've ever authored. But it was titled "Why Environmentalists Will Eventually Hate Renewable Power." So it basically was like, because advocates of wind and solar, they'll always say that, these things are getting better. These technologies are getting better. They're getting more efficient. The energy produced by wind and solar is getting cheaper and cheaper. Now, I just granted them that point in this article. In reality, the efficiency increases are actually leveling off for these technologies. And I always quote, I think it was a Manhattan Institute piece, that's the days of the 10-fold increase in efficiency of wind and solar are over. Those days are over. But my point in my article was that if we ever did get to a point where wind and solar was super cheap, environmentalists would start to hate it, because it would allow for the economy to go along as it's been going for the last 100 years, right? And this was proven, to me at least, this is proven by a story in 1989 where two scientists announced that they made a breakthrough with cold fusion. And if true, and it wasn't, but if true, this would unlock the potential of limitless, clean, cheap energy. And so you would think that people would rejoice. Oh, great, cheap energy, fantastic. The master resource is now super cheap, super clean, essentially limitless. Like, let's create a utopia. That was not the response. In response to this, a number of environmentalists at the time started to rant against this as a potential disaster. And the person that put it most bluntly was biologist Paul Ehrlich, who, again, Justin and I love, who said that unlocking the concept of free energy would be like, quote, giving a machine gun to an idiot child. Because, again, in their world, this just reinforces these foundations of capitalism and free markets, and basically eliminates the need for some overarching government to take control of something to steer us away from this impending disaster, which in this case is climate change.
Yeah, it's funny. I've met people who are very who are very liberal, and even borderline like socialists, like Bernie Sanders type supporters. And we'll go through the debates about socialism and, capitalism and all this stuff. And I'll get them to a point where they will admit that socialism is not as effective. It is not as efficient. It has been associated with all sorts of problems in the past. They'll admit it. And they'll say capitalism does a better job of all those things, of building wealth in society and all of that. It does a better job of it. Not necessarily equally, but it does a better job of building wealth in general. But they'll say, we have this, at the cost of that is, it's like it's a profit at any cost, and it destroys the planet over time, and it's not sustainable. Eventually, just the profit at all costs mentality, just grow the economy bigger and bigger. That's eventually going to catch up with you. And eventually the world's not going to be able to continue to produce these things. And we're just going to essentially destroy all the natural resources and be living in a wasteland someday, right? That's how they look at it. And that idea, so this person, they eventually get to the point, he said, I'm not even really a socialist, except for the fact that I have to be because of this. This is the only reason I'm a socialist.
Yeah, climate change is essentially like the Hail Mary. Once you box them into the corner of like, no, the things that you're saying, will turn out to be a disaster. Right. Even practically speaking, they're not good solutions and all of this stuff. Like, well, we have to do something because climate change. Yep. Like, it's their Hail Mary. Yeah, it's their go-to at the end.
And it's the Hail Mary to win the argument, and it's also the safety net that allows them to sleep at night with all of the horrible history of socialism and everything else. Because they can always lean back and say, you know what? Even if I'm wrong, the other side's going to destroy all of humanity and the whole planet. So we have to do this no matter what, right? No matter what, we have to do this. And that's That fundamentally is the point. And what you're saying is, and this is such an important point for people to understand, is that once you go down that road of actually having clean energy and just tons of it, an unlimited amount of it, essentially, if you can ever get to that point, then you can't stuff the genie back in the bottle. It's all over for them. Yeah. Now it's like, well, we've got unlimited energy, so let's make life better. Right. And to them, that's not what they really want. They don't really want more humans. They don't really want us to continue expanding. They don't want more cities. They don't want more jobs. They really don't. I mean, some of them do, but most of them do not. What they want is for us to actually have fewer human beings, fewer cities to live. I mean, more cities, but not more cities, but more concentrated population. They don't want people living all over the place. They want them concentrated in places where they're isolated and they're not destroying the planet. And they want to, a lot of them talk about rewilding, which if you don't know what that is, it means essentially allowing nature to overrun existing cities and stuff. They're actual environmentalists, big name environmentalists, who are out there saying we should move people from population centers to even more concentrated population centers and allow nature to just take over much of the country. Like, that's what they really want. That, at the end of the day, is why this whole debate is not about energy, really. Yeah. It's not, for most of these people. It's really just about, they're kind of anti-human.
No, and the thing that we say all the time when we talk about the Green New Deal, you've already mentioned how it was just full of all of these other social programs and all of this stuff. And we say this all the time. If you really thought the world was ending, why would you spend 1 penny or 1 second trying to convince people to have some free college program attached to your world-saving solution? It's why would you bog yourself down with trying to convince people of free college when you're trying to save the world? Yeah. So that, and again, it's like, if the world's ending, you would think every solution is on the table to prevent that. Not just our political football specifically of wind and solar. When you see these environmentalist types talking about the end of the world is coming and all of this, but they reject even the idea of nuclear power, then you know that they're just like on the take, and they're not really genuine in their claims. So remember, when you hear somebody ranting and raving about climate change, keep in mind the words of AOC's former chief of staff. It's a how do you change the entire economy thing. It's not an environment thing. Right. Justin, any last words before we sign off for this segment?
No last words.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you all for tuning into this. Please, like I said, the easiest thing you could do to help us out is just hit that like button, share this content to friends and family, subscribe to our channel. If you want to see more content, obviously, Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube. You could also go to stoppingsocialism.com. We're also on various social media across the interwebs. Facebook, Stopping Socialism. We have a Parler account. We have a Instagram account. You can find us if you're looking hard enough. Justin, where can the fine people find you?
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook and Socialist Twitter and Parler.
Thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you next time.